Welcome everybody to this afternoon's webinar. We're just going to wait a few moments for more of you to trickle in. I can see the attendee number increasing there. Whilst we do, I'd just like to welcome you. The session we're going to be running this afternoon is all about tax return workflows and how you can manage capacity and streamline information collection during tax season. Before we jump into the content, I'm just going to run through some very quick housekeeping rules. I'm sure you've heard all of these before because everybody has attended more than enough Zoom webinars so far this year. We do have a chat feature on the Zoom. It should be located at the bottom of your taskbar. Please use that to talk amongst yourselves if you've got any questions throughout the session. If you've got any questions specifically for myself or any of our panelists today, then the best place to do that would be in the Q&A section. So next to the chat box, there should be a Q&A box. And if you can just put any questions in there for the speakers, then we can help to monitor those throughout the session as we're going along. You should also have the option to adjust the speaker view that you see in Zoom. So if you go to the top right corner, you should be able to toggle between speaker view and gallery view. That just means instead of just seeing me speaking right now, you should be able to see everybody's videos alongside them as well. So I think that's everything in terms of housekeeping rules. We're going to get started with the session. I can see a few people still coming in. But joining me today, I have 4 panelists. You should be able to see them all here now. Obviously myself, I'm one of the co-founders here at Pixie. I have my other co-founder and CEO, Celso, he's here as well. We also have Chris Downing from Sage and Kieran Phelan from Cloud 360 Accounting. So I'm just going to hand over to those guys to do a very quick intro to who they are. Celso, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Celso. I'm one of the co-founders here at Pixie. Before Pixie, I had another business called Simple Tax a few years back. And through that, learned quite a lot about optimizing for workflows and making sure that everything's streamlined leading up to January. So I hope to be able to contribute some value today.
Awesome. Thank you. Chris, over to you.
Thank you, Jordan. So my name's Chris. I've been at Sage just over 2.5 years, but prior to that, I was an accountant for 19 years. So with that firm, I started when I was a child from university, did all my studies with them, moved up the ranks, left as a partner. But clearly I have experience of how a firm is growing from 30 people to 230 people, the demands, the challenges, and the, let's say, the interesting conversations when you have with clients on the 30th or the 31st of January, wanting, can I have my tax return late? I'll be prepared. So this will be an interesting conversation. Brilliant. Thank you for joining us, Chris. And last but by no means least, Kieran.
Jordan, thank you. My name is Kieran Phelan. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud 360 Accounting, a digital accounting firm here in Northern Ireland. So 10 years ago, I started the firm and I was the first zero advisor in Northern Ireland, and I've basically been sort of cloud digital based ever since. Prior to that, I trained in PwC for a number of years, and then I moved to another mid-sized practice here in Derry in Northern Ireland. I was the manager in that practice for about 6 years, managing sort of 300 or 400 kind of client tax return cases, and a team of staff as well. Currently here at Cloud 360 Accounting, we have about 145 clients, and we have a team of about 6 or 7. So we're kind of building out our management report and so on. But yes, we still are facing challenges with regard to tax return deadlines. So interesting to see what we get through today.
Definitely. And it's great to see that between all 3 of you, you've all got so much experience within this tax return season. Celso, obviously you from the Go Simple Tax days, but Chris and Kieran both from the practice area as well. So I guess kicking off would be good to take a bit of a pulse on who's actually on the call with us to find out how you guys are currently getting on with your tax deadline. So I do have a very quick poll to launch, which is just to find out what percentage of tax returns have you completed so far. Have you only done a few? Have you done more than half? Have you done most of them? It'd be good just to figure out where most of the people on the call are, and then figure out what we can actually do really to bring that number up closer to 100 as soon as possible. So just going to wait a few more seconds for you to finish off voting on that. I see just over half have voted so far. Cool. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Last few people. I'm going to end polling now. Great. So I'll share those results with you. So looking at these, what we can see is that actually most people have done less than 50% of tax returns so far. To be honest, I think given the year that many accounts have had, and this is something Chris is going to talk about in a second, this isn't surprising, and hopefully it's reassuring for you to see this and think, there are other people in the same boat as you. It's not just yourself that's a little bit behind on the tax returns this year. There are many firms out there as well. So with that in mind, I'm just going to hand over to Chris very quickly, who's going to run us through this graph here, just to talk about why firms might be behind on tax returns this year more than normal.
Jordan, yeah. So quite early in the year, sort of April, May time, when we were talking about, let's say, the demands which accountants are facing from their clients, I quickly sort of spun up this sort of graphical infographic to actually explain, like, it's all about planning ahead. So to try and explain what we're talking about is that if you imagine, let's say, the capacity or the productivity of an accountancy firm, i.e. the amount of time they spend on client activities, the green bars help try and illustrate that. So the fact is that clearly you've got the peaks of January, but then also it's the build up to over November and December. It's the fact that there's less time available. But really, since March, all of that has just gone out the window. It's the fact that the client demand model has changed. Small business owners, businesses of all types, all ilks, have suddenly called upon their accountant and bookkeeper for more work, more help, more assistance, whether that's been furlough claims, the interpretation of new legislation, which seem to change every week. So therefore, accountants have really been the fourth emergency service. But when you think about what's going to be happening going forward, yes, we are complete. I say we, I still think of myself as an accountant, so apologies if I use that analogy. It's the fact that we are completely fatigued, and I do feel tired myself because it's been a busy old year. But when we think about what's going on and going through January, the workload is continuously going to be very high because we've been supporting clients throughout the summer as well as up to Christmas. We're going to be supporting clients in terms of how they're going to be repaying back debt because they've either borrowed personally, they've either been deferring their VAT, they're going to be given the option to defer income tax payments. So therefore, it's not just about support in terms of actually what else or what other government systems will be available. It's supporting them in terms of how they can survive and grow out of to next year, but also how they're going to repay cash because they've borrowed money, they've either extended their credit terms, they're basically delaying paying suppliers. So therefore, how do you get back onto an even kilt? So the stress and strain, the time spent by accountants on, let's say, non-compliance activities is going to carry on into next year, when actually February, March has been the traditional period when you actually think about your own business, your operations, with your plans for next year, what types of new tech you're going to apply, the people you're going to employ, how you're going to sort of, let's say, redeploy different services or think about the services you can apply. So this is really what's happened to date. This is going to be almost a slight rinse and repeat into next year. All fingers crossed it gets better, but we need to be mindful that actually what we're seeing for last year could actually be planning out in April 2023. I say that with a sense of caution for making tax full fat. So it's all about actually how do we think about managing jobs and client expectations. Really, this is really a fantastic webinar. I'll be talking about it because income tax returns is the pain point which most small businesses face, and the case of how we're going to manage that going forward en masse going forward.
Definitely, yeah. It's really interesting to see this like visually laid out because, like you say, January is not just going to be the tax return month; it's going to be tax return month plus all the additional stuff that's come off the back of what's been happening. So I'm just going to stop sharing that for now. Carrying on with this same train of thought, Kieran, like what tips do you have for firms on the call today in terms of how they can manage capacity of their staff members over the next few weeks and into January?
It really depends as well on where you're at on your tax return completion sort of graph. You know, if you're in the I've only got 25 to 50% versus we're at 75 to 100%. It really depends on what phase that you're in there. But overall, in terms of managing that capacity, some firms will have to revert to what a lot of firms still do in January, which is just all hands on deck, work, you know, long hours to get it done, and just share the work out accordingly. But it is important to have some kind of systems in place to know that you know, no one or two or group of people are being overwhelmed with the numbers that they maybe have on their list, on their portfolio, and other people seem to be getting through theirs maybe a bit quicker. And I think just get everybody kind of working together. If you're in that kind of bottom tier, shall we say, I don't like using the word tier in this kind of conversation nowadays, but you know, if you do have X number of tax returns to get done. If you're less than 50%, it's going to be just share it out as best possible and as evenly as possible, and manage the process very, very closely on a daily and weekly basis. And when I say manage the process, have a good workflow system in place, if not already, and even start with something simple before you move on to a fully fledged and fully implemented and integrated workflow management system. Get ready for that process as well. Now is the time to do that, but it has to be a system which shows you exactly where its job's at and allows the likes of myself, or if you're a partner, to jump into certain cases and certainly chase clients and lift the phone to get people to react that bit quicker as well. So clubbing together and working as a team is the main aspect if you're in that more difficult, challenging number sector.
And I guess like an interesting question on people's minds is going to be, what should the policy be over Christmas? Like, should there be a Christmas break for staff members for, working hard all year? They've had an incredibly busy year. Should it be a case of, shutting down the office on the 23rd and reopening in January? Or should there be, just an admission that, look, we really need to get on top of this stuff, so we need to be working over Christmas? Celso, do you have any thoughts around that?
Say it's complicated. I was talking to someone the other day, and they were telling me that they're already in the 9 to 11 mode, which is 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. I still have flashbacks of those times, to be honest. But it's a complicated thing, as Chris alluded to. What's going on right now with COVID and all the compliance necessary and support necessary is going to shape up pretty much what's going to happen. So potentially, 1/4 of the firm or half the firm is going to be dedicated to supporting clients on that, and the other half is going to be focused on getting those tax returns across the line. I do feel obviously that it would be great to give everyone a bit of a break, given that Christmas falls right around the weekend. The following week is going to be pretty much dead. I think everyone kind of needs that mental space right now. If not to just recharge energies a tiny bit, even if it's home, but just getting that break away from work, if possible. So that would be kind of like my recommendation, if possible at all. But right now it's go time for everyone, I guess. So recommendations are easy to give out, but it's really hard to make them fit into the reality of day-to-day work.
Definitely. Chris and Kieran, anything to add to that in terms of breaking over Christmas?
Yeah, it's a must-have, isn't it? Obviously, this is an HR webinar. We can't dictate what people's policies are, but I think it is going to be for the greater good of your employees and your colleagues if they do take a break, because let's just think about it. If they don't, January is going to be a really hard push, and it's going to be February, it's going to be March. The next natural break is going to be Easter, isn't it? Because there's going to be no proper half term, there's going to be no holidays, and it's a case of people need that mental break. And me personally, it's so easy to get up when it's dark, you start work, you carry on working, and you carry working till late. But actually, in those times when you say, right, I'm going to finish work at 5, I'm going to take the evening off, you do feel so much better the next day because you've had that mental break. So just imagine what 3 days, a week, even 2 weeks will actually play at the end of this year, ready for January, because at the end of the day, people have been working ridiculous hours all year long. And if they want to be performing at their best in January, which is going to be longer hours, they need to have a bit of a break, that mental break. Otherwise, you're going to have some people which are going to be maybe not really in the right frame of mind to be working the hours they need to do for January. So it's doing the right thing. And then it calls into, let's say, managing client expectations. That'd be the best thing to do going forward into January.
Definitely. I've just launched a quick poll just to take a pulse on the audience to see what you guys are planning to do. But I think you raised an interesting point there, Chris, that the natural breaks that would typically come after Christmas aren't going to be there. So if it's not a case of breaking now, then when are the breaks going to be? So yeah, it makes complete sense just for the team's mental health and your own mental health to take that time off over Christmas so that you can hit the ground running in January. I'm just going to give it a few more seconds for the results of these to come in. 3.
Just while that's coming on, I'll chip in and just say that I think it's a really good idea if people ask their team, what do they want to do? Because it's easy, I suppose, as the owner and or partner to sort of make a decision along the lines of, look, be off Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, Boxing Day, maybe come on for a couple of half days, and then we're fully fledged on the 4th again. But you can get better team buy-in if you let them make their own decisions. Some people will say, no, I need a break. Some people will say, I'm going to actually do something because they're possibly still working from home over the Christmas period anyway, just to break up their week. Maybe empower them, let them make their own decisions and get the buy-in from there. But all in all, my gut feeling would be people need the time off. And Christmas is a time that you should be spending with your family. Probably more so this year than ever before. But having that mental break is going to, I believe, lead to better productivity anyway come the month of January. But get the team to help make that decision and maybe give them the power to decide individually what they want to do.
Yeah, definitely give them the choice. Just showing these results quickly, it looks like most people here are planning to take the break during that time, even if it's just for a few days, which is good to see. So looking forwards, then we've established obviously that this January is going to be a little bit busier than normal with everything that's going on. In terms of getting information in from clients, obviously, if you're using a cloud accounting application, you're going to have quite a lot of information there, but it's going to be the little things like if they've got rental accounts, how do you get that info from the different directors and stuff? So what tips and tricks do you have for really kind of getting information in from clients, or even how you can leverage technology to do that, but then also how you can escalate it if you're not getting information in quick enough? Kieran, any ideas?
Yeah, I think I've always said in webinars like this and talking to other accountants and talking to accountants over here that I actually coach as well on stuff like this, that technology is the tool, it's the lever, and should be utilized as best possible. So there are always going to be things that can be and therefore should be automated using technology, Jordan. And systems like we are obviously clear that we're a Pixie user since about April, May this year. And we try to use whatever automation tools there are within these types of systems to get the automated requests coming through. But to me, again, this whole industry is all about people to people. So at some point, lifting the phone to chase information and elevating it to a high enough level, like I could tell you off the top of my head the types of clients and the names of the clients who I know will probably only react when I lift the phone and say, "Where is your stuff?" That's just the way some people are, and it's a legacy issue for some clients. They've been with us for sort of maybe the full 8 or 10 year period, whereas some of the more up-to-date clients we're bringing them in on the basis of this is how we work. Therefore, we want to make sure we get things done slightly ahead of time as well. So automate whatever you can through technology. But for us, it's like maybe have automated requests going through, but once it hits a certain level, like we sort of workflows and checklists within Pixie, when it gets to this level, if not already now received and marked as received, let's see those. Have we done the 3 automated requests? Right, now it's time for Kieran to lift the phone and say, please give us your stuff. So yeah, make it as automated as possible, but keep that human touch involved.
Sometimes who needs the boss, doesn't it? Once the boss gets involved. Yeah.
Sometimes there's no getting away from it, Chris.
Yeah.
I think the interesting point out of what you mentioned there, Kieran, was the fact that it sounds like you almost do have this escalation process in place where you say that after the first 3 automated touch points, if nothing has still happened, then that's the point. It goes to you and you pick up the phone and you say, we need this information from you right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chris, anything to add to the point about getting information in from clients?
Yeah, and the whole point is clients have different personas and attitudes to life, don't they? Some, like accountants, some love getting stuff done as soon as it comes through the inbox, while some always work to the deadline. And it's the same with clients. It's the fact that you will never have a perfect client base where they're fine-tuning and providing information on a timely basis. Don't have to ask them. You send them an email or a WhatsApp message and they'll respond straight away. That's never going to happen. So you need to apply the 80-20 rule in the fact that 80% of your clients will eventually be fantastic. They will basically work around the way you want to operate as an accounting practice. But like everything, it's always going to be that 20%. That's sort of the people who are stuck in their ways. And yeah, I still remember the clients who will always deliver the information in the last week of January. You're never going to change them. No matter how much you force them, how many times you say, I'm going to double the fee next year, it's just not going to happen. But what you can do is improve the experience you get from the mass market or the clients which actually want to be playing the game you want to be playing, which means that by refining the process for them, creating new habits naturally creates better opportunities or capacity to win new clients. And those clients who aren't really, let's say, the ones which you want, will naturally over time either comply or they will move on. But what it does mean, you will have a better accounting practice over time. So this is the whole point. It's great that we can see examples from Kieran in terms of how he's operating his accounting practice. But let's be honest, there are tens of thousands of accounting practices still experiencing unautomated processes, looking at their clients on an Excel spreadsheet, not really quite understanding the process, or let's say the journey where a client is in terms of applying the tax return. And it's a case of actually applying little techniques throughout the whole year to improve the overall process.
Yeah, I think the key point here is that tech and automation will definitely help to save you time and leverage this process and automate it where possible. But it's not the ultimate solution. It's not going to get everybody's info in 100% so that you finish tax season in October and it's all taken care of. It's just going to take care of a lot of the harder work and the initial kind of remembering to send people emails and not knowing where to track work. So it's definitely worth having, but obviously it's not the be all and end all solution. Celso, in terms of like how firms should be keeping track of work, managing different stages, managing what's in, what's not in, how should they be approaching that over the next few weeks?
With the assumption that lots of firms out there are going to be using the most streamlined software possible, which is Excel, I would just tell everyone get off it right away. The number one thing for that really is to try to give staff more autonomy and reduce the chances of mistakes. So if you're thinking about keeping Excel just because it's really easy to get stuff managed in it, just try to get off it. We can help in Pixie, obviously. There's plenty of other alternatives out there. But I would definitely invite everyone to start a Pixie trial that goes into January. So that's my sales bit. Now, in terms of getting the workflow in place, really, it's just a matter of understanding what are the different stages. As Kieran mentioned, just having very clear stages of it gets to this point, information comes in, great, let's make a note of that. And then if you need to chase information, that's a different stage. And then if it needs to be escalated, that's a different stage. So just making sure that you have that pipeline in place is going to be really, really useful. And it's going to, again, help with the team autonomy, because if everyone knows what stage things are at and what's the next stage that they need to be in, it's really easy to just keep moving things forward. Whereas if it's not crystal clear what that very basic process is, then it just becomes a lot more complicated. Last thing I would recommend really is to try to avoid thinking too hard about processes right now. Just think about stages. That's the only thing that matters. This comes in, gets to this stage, goes to that stage, so on and so forth until it gets delivered. Everything else right now is just noise, and perhaps best thought in, not February, take a break, but March, let's say. And that's a really good time to start reevaluating processes.
Definitely. And I think although we're talking specifically about tax returns here, and Chris alluded to this earlier, actually this is part of a much bigger conversation around changing client expectations. The way that accountants have got to deliver certain services is changing, MTDs coming in. There's going to be a lot of things that are changing in the way that you deliver regular compliance stuff. And without a robust system and processes in place, it's going to be very difficult to actually stay on top of this and keep track of where things are.
Yeah. And it's interesting because one of the things we saw, and I'm sure Kieran sees this and Chris as well, which is with Simple Tax, for example, back in the day, obviously, as a tax filing software, we would get lots of clients in January. It's just the way the nature of the beast is. But then once we started feeding them those emails right at the end or at the beginning of the tax filing, so around May, we would see lots of people just coming back around that time. So that allowed us to just skew everything away from January to earlier in the year and just compensate that and just make room in January as well. And hopefully the next year is going to be a bit less stressful, hopefully. Let's see how that goes. But again, it's not the end all be all, but there are definitely techniques that can be applied to try to alleviate and make sure that nothing falls through the cracks in January. Chris, Kieran, what do you guys think?
If I would agree with everything you're saying there, Celso. I mean, if you're at the stage now, what I'm trying to do, I suppose, is give people advice if they're at the stage where they could less than 50% with their tax returns completed, and they're facing what they see as just an absolutely crazy tax season from now to the end of January. Like how do you track and manage the jobs through that process? Number one, just like Celso saying, now may not be the time to start considering changing systems or even implementing anything. It may just be the case that you've got to use what you have and use it to the best that you can, and don't overcomplicate the thing. So yes, if you're using an Excel spreadsheet to track your jobs, or you're using a Google Sheet, just keep doing that. And then make sure that the system that you do have has got those stages that Celso was talking about. So for example, even if it is a Google or an Excel sheet, we've got a column as well. We tag jobs in Pixie. We've set up our own sort of what stage is a job at, and we don't overcomplicate that either. So it's either books not received, books requested maybe 1, books requested 2, books requested 3, which is this is the stage we're at. So very quickly visually, as long as you can see that on your spreadsheet, okay, there's ones at 3, I need to make those calls, in progress or ready for review, reviewed and adjustments to make, ready for the client, get it out the door type of workflow. Something as simple as that on whatever system you're currently using is going to be good enough. But again, I'll go back to the human to human. If you've got a team of people in your office, I remember when I became manager in the previous firm I was with, the partner said to me, make sure you get up off your desk and walk around the office and just see how people are, how you do, what are you working on, anything you want a bit of help with. Because quite often, especially when things are really, really busy, somebody could be just stuck in something and so under pressure that they've just got their head down trying to fix a problem. And very much, if you're there to be able to say, well, actually, just make these changes and let's go for it. Almost forget about the training aspect. If it's just a matter of getting jobs done now, help people as much as you can to get them out the door. So, but also as well, I think, Jordan, it's important now to think about the future. I remember when I started the business 10 years ago, I was coming away from that practice and we were doing 75% of our tax returns in January on average. It was just absolutely ridiculous. Every February, it was like, we're never doing this again. And then next January, you're in the exact same position. And I realized very quickly, that's just down to your own decisions. You can sort of say it's the clients, but it's not really. Because I remember reading an article on Accounting Web about a sort of 6 months to a year in, and a guy on there was saying, I do all my tax returns at the end of November. And I thought, well, that's just, how is that even possible? The world doesn't work like that. But he was making a decision, well, that's how my business works. And if people don't work that way, then we just say we don't do them in December, we don't do them in January. And I sort of brought that policy in gradually, and it wasn't perfect. But I do remember maybe 3 or 4 years later going to a networking event in January, meeting another accountant, being asked how many tax returns we got to do in January, and I said 6, and it was like, no, that's just not possible. But it is. So if you make the decision now, what kind of business model you want to have going forward, I mean, you're going to have communication and meetings with clients now to finalize their tax returns. So make them aware that, look, from next year on, this is how we're going to work with you, because we don't want to be telling you in January, here's your tax bill, you have 2 weeks to pay it. And okay, now under the whole COVID response, the government are going to let you pay it over 12 months if it's under 30K. But we want to move away from that. We want to get you ready for MTD. So you've got a couple of opportunities to have this conversation to make the whole thing different from next year onwards.
Yeah, I think now is as good a time as any to actually start getting this stuff in place in terms of the processes, the communications with the clients, managing their expectations and having everything nailed down. Just a quick question for you all. There's obviously a lot of people asking whether or not the self-assessment deadline might get moved. If it did, hypothetically, do you think it's a good idea that firms work to the new deadline or actually still try and get them out of the door in January?
Aim for the 31st of January. For a start, practically, moving the deadline, I don't think the computer systems can cope with it. So if HMRC want to be nice, they should pause late filing penalties, but the deadline is the 31st of January. Because if you extend the deadline, February will become the new January, March will become the new January, it'll be a never ending. But also it's the case of what we're experiencing right now, we've experienced for just over 20 years since self-assessment came into play. It's like the story is that a vast majority of tax returns always get completed in January. It's what we should be doing is thinking, right, let's just nail this January, whether that's actually filing the returns as they are, speaking to the client about, we'll put provisional numbers in and we'll revise them in February. but also at the end of the day is that people need certainty of what the tax liability is going to be. So like every year, you will get through January. It's going to be painful, it's going to be stressful, it's going to be horrible, but that's what always happens. But what you need to do is in February, do that sort of tax return autopsy, understand what went well, if there was anything good, identify the bad items, and think about how you can make it better. So for example, they're like everything, there are those clients who always leave it too late. There are probably 5 of them. They're probably the stressful clients. Identify them, do something about them. The fact that it's February and majority of them will have a March year end, force yourself in April, if the information was basically the buy-to-let income, in April, that's your mission. Get that information for those 5 worst clients in April and boss that return in June and July. It's done. But also, the fact is, it's all about conversation. So you're going to have so many more conversations still in February and March because clients want your help. So therefore, March, April this year end, even though the pandemic kicked in March, was still a very good year for a lot of businesses. So they have quite high tax bills. So the conversation is about how can we manage that tax bill, and also think about, have you got losses for this year to be managing? So again, give us the information faster or quicker, sooner, so we can actually get the job done, advise you and manage your tax liabilities, because you have the July payments on account to manage. So there's so many conversation points to think about where you're being preemptive and proactive for them to actually bring information to you sooner. So it's a case of this little that we could probably do to help for this January, but there's an awful lot we can do to make next January better.
Yeah, definitely. Kieran, anything to add to that?
I mean, just like Chris is saying, in terms of January being the deadline, and January will always be like January. I mean, if HMRC in the future decided we're going to move the self-assessment deadline to December or November, that would be your new January, no matter what. For most accounting firms and some of the clients, they would like, well, that's going to be the month we're absolutely slaughtered doing this type of work. So you have to make a decision about how to plan forward from that. And just like Chris is saying, you know, coming into February and March, yes, you may have a lot of clients who run with the tax year, so it's going to be, you know, April to March or 6th of April to the 5th of April. But if you can adopt or have already adopted cloud tools, there's no reason why you can't be getting, even if it's a once a year type client, give us your bank statements. We're going to do the import, or we've got a bank feed, and we're going to do some prep work for you now in the months of February and March, so that when you're hitting that year end date or the tax year end comes along, you're just looking for the minimal amounts of information at that point in time. So that's a good way of planning ahead properly for what the workflow is going to be like for the next year as well. So start to think about what you can do ahead of time, rather than sort of letting it drift to a month end and saying, okay. And whatever system you're going to use, you have to be able to plan your workflow from that. So if we take our 145 clients, like at the start of the year, we're going to plan to do whatever jobs it is throughout the course of the year in certain months. So, and we'll go and say to the client, look, we're planning to do your job in May, we're planning to do your job in June, and we'll try then to squeeze it back to maybe November this year. That's going to be the aim. I wanted to do that this year, but I thought, well, it's just not going to happen realistically. Some people are so snowed under with COVID related stuff that it's just, and people weren't in the right headspace. But for accountants, I think now is the time to start getting into the headspace to make this different going forward and make that choice. Once you make that choice, you can implement the processes and systems coming from that and educate your clients to play ball.
Yeah. I think it's a tough decision, isn't it? I can see Donna has left a comment in the chat box to say that, you know, moving the deadline would take the pressure off a little bit more. And yeah, completely agree. It would relieve the pressure. Although I guess to Chris and Kieran's point, it's just moving the goalpost slightly, that you've still got to do it at some point. Just before we kind of start to wrap up with some final thoughts in terms of, you know, looking forward to how we can plan towards next year, I'm just going to take a few minutes just to share a little bit about Pixie and how that works and how that might be able to help you with some of these processes and systems and information collection that we've spoken about so far. In the meantime, if you do have any questions for any of the speakers so far, please put them in the Q&A box and we'll answer those in a couple of minutes time. But if I just jump out of here, and go into here, what you can see here is just a very, very simple tax return workflow inside Pixie. On the left-hand side, we have a number of checklist items covering all the different steps. And then on the right-hand side, we have things like email templates with previews and links where they can upload documents. We have a stage here to chase a client if they didn't reply. Then we have additional information such as checklists, training videos, everything that you need to keep track of the work, what you need to do, and how you need to progress through tax season. So in terms of completing these tasks, it's just very simple. You know, you come in and you just tick them off one by one as you do them. So we've done this one, we've done this one. And if you wanted to edit this template slightly, you know, Kieran mentioned earlier that his process, they have 2 or 3 chases before they escalate it. Then all you need to do is just edit the template here. Go to this one here. And we can edit the different steps to add more in. So if we wanted to say, add another chase step in between 3 and 5, then we would just do here, chase again, save that there. Then we can move this further up here. So then we're building just a very, very simple process of different stages for people to follow when they're completing the work. What we've also got in here is the ability to actually assign tasks and checklists to clients. So as well as requesting information, I've set up here a pre-populated client task where we've got a checklist of things that we want them to submit. And we've also got a training video for them to watch. So if they've got any questions about what they need to submit, then they can watch this as well. So in terms of how this will go to the client, all you would do is you would build this here, you would click send to client. They get a nice email that looks like this. You can edit the content completely. And then you can set up some automatic reminders. So we spoke earlier about automation, just taking some of that kind of heavy lifting out of the process for you so you can focus more on doing the work. And this is exactly what this does. You can say, okay, remind the client every 4 days until they've supplied this information. So instead of you and the team having to worry about reminding the client, you can just set it up as an automatic reminder, hit update, click send, and then that will just keep nagging the client very gently in the background to actually upload this stuff to you. So it just takes that little bit of pressure off you. So if you think it takes, 5 minutes to chase a client for something, you're doing that for 100 clients, that's 500 minutes of time. If you can get Pixie or something similar to do that in the background so that you can focus on actually just doing the tax returns with the information that you have, then it's going to save you an enormous amount of time. What we also have here at the top in terms of statuses is just the ability to set different tags like Kieran mentioned earlier he uses in his firm. So we might say for this one, we're still waiting on the client to send us something, or we might say, actually, no, we're in the process of reviewing the tax return. And what these different tags allow us to do is actually to report on the different stages of work. So if I go to the team tab in Pixie and click on the work report, this is just going to show me a list of all the current jobs and tasks within my entire firm. But I can filter this just like you would filter an Excel table. It's just a lot more secure. There's much less risk of manual error, and you've got a lot more automation inside Pixie as well. So we're just going to look at open tax return jobs. So it's going to do status open. Template is personal tax. That's just going to show me all the current open personal tax jobs within my firm. You can see here that I've got 28 of them. You can see who they're allocated to. And then I can also see here that some have got certain tags, like this one here is currently in the review stage. So if I wanted to filter more specifically, I could say, great, show me all the personal tax jobs. Oops, gone a bit too far here. Where the tag is review tax return, this one here. Apply that, then this is just going to show me all of those jobs. So it's a really, really straightforward way of just tracking all of the work, but also having those clear processes and using some of the automation that we've spoken about in this session to save some time so that you can actually focus on getting work done. So I'm just going to jump out of here very quickly. I don't want to spend too much time in Pixie, but I just wanted to show that as an example of how easy it is really just to have these processes and use some of this automation, and getting started with this doesn't take time. Kieran can probably attest to this, that getting started with something like Pixie is very, very simple. It's a matter of hours of just add your clients, assign the tax return jobs, and you're up and running very, very quickly. So I guess looking forwards, guys, obviously, client management, managing client expectations is going to play a huge, it's going to become much, much bigger and more important over the coming months. Chris, what is your advice to anybody on the call in terms of their thoughts around using something like Pixie or using another client management platform to help manage work going forwards into 2021?
It's got to be key, hasn't it? Because the whole point is a spreadsheet's great. It's manipulative. You can do any column, any action you like. But actually what is useful at a spreadsheet, you can plan how your practice wants to operate, how you're going to collaborate with your colleagues, the type of I don't know, idiosyncrasies of your practice, how you want to operate. But then what you do, you need to be using client management, practice management solutions, which help you actually identify not only all your clients. It's very easy to say, how many clients have you got? What are their actions? What are their responsibilities? What are their target dates? But more importantly, there's various jobs and roles and responsibilities and actions which need to happen to get the actual job out the door. Because even with a personal tax return, we talk about, let's say, those various stages, but it's everything from actually talking to the client at the beginning of the year to understand what happened the previous year, getting the information. It all has to happen. And as an accounting practice, whether you're a sole trader or a person employing 5 or 10, 15, 20 people, the only way you're going to scale and grow is have true visibility of all the work within your practice and when it's landing. Because it's inevitable, accounting practices are going to be busier in the years to come. It's not because of there's going to be another pandemic. Legislation is always changing. So you think Q1 next year, CIS reverse tax, the outcome of Brexit, you've got changes in VAT still, you've got MTD for income tax and corporation tax. Whenever you've got business uncertainty, you get client demand. And therefore, the day job of accounts and tax returns, they're never going to disappear. Yes, they may become faster and easier to produce, but there's going to be a huge demand of new jobs coming to play. So job and task management, it's got to be those sort of the key bits of technology that accounting practices need to implement.
Definitely. Celso, do you have anything to add to that? Obviously, you've got the perspective of being at Pixie, so maybe a slightly biased view. But in your experience, obviously, you speak to a lot of firms who are currently using other tools to manage clients, namely spreadsheets or systems like Trello, for example. But looking forwards, like Chris just mentioned there, with the way that the accounting profession is changing, like how important is this practice management piece?
I think it's going to be pretty central. Again, everyone's moving towards service or improving client service and ensuring certain standards of service. It's been discussed right here between us, the importance of even clients that come around once a year. I've done professional services myself, so I know exactly how it goes. You tend to focus on the clients that bring the most revenue, super normal. But in fact, what we want to have is strategies and tactics also that retain these smaller clients, and they ensure that they don't leave because they don't feel appreciated or they're not getting the level of service they expect, etc. So I think that one of the most important things, really, in addition to practice management, is just ensuring that there's some sort of relationship management, perhaps more important than the managing the work internally. It's just managing that relationship with the client and making it personal. As Kieran alluded, a phone call goes a long way. It's also very time consuming. So if you have hundreds of clients, it's a bit hard to manage. But throughout the year, just having certain emails, informing people that, things are getting started, things are going to get delivered by Datex. Not that the client needs to do something, but just to keep them aware. And the thing that is most interesting for us, and, I've spoken to you about this as we are talking to accountants that have been using Pixie for a while now, is that they're seeing that openness of clients to have conversations around fee increases with a bit less resistance, just because they see that productivity, they have that visibility over things that are getting done. And at the same time, the firms have more touch points with clients to just create more opportunities. So I think those things could be a really important aspect of 2021. But let's see how the year plays out. At this point, it's kind of a toss-up. Who knows what's going to happen? Definitely.
I think touching on what you said there, client experience is a huge part of this. Obviously, using technology like practice management apps does benefit you in terms of internal efficiency, but actually what it does is improve the client's experience as well. If you have a more streamlined approach for onboarding new clients or requesting information from them or letting them know that you're starting and ending jobs, then their overall experience with you as a firm is much better. And they're going to say, the last accountant I worked with, it took him months to get all this information from me and he was constantly nagging me on the phone, but you just sent me this tidy email with a link or a form and I clicked here, I clicked there, and it was so much simpler. So yeah, the client experience is a big part of this. I'm just conscious of time because I was aiming to wrap up a quarter to. Just to finish with some final thoughts from you guys for the people that are listening, what would be your kind of biggest piece of advice or tip for people or for accountants to kind of get through the next few weeks in terms of managing work and managing their team members? Kieran, we can start with you.
I think we were chatting sort of about job management, about people management. I think decision management also is a big factor in this, and making decisions quickly. And actually what I always found in the past, in my previous practice I worked, was that the speed of decision making in December and January was like 10 times what it was for the rest of the year. And sometimes procrastination can actually get you to this point year on year, and then you feel like you're just going into the same process again year on year, so that December, January just becomes the same old, and working to sort of the 9 to 11 p.m. type shifts. So if you manage the decisions that you're making now and carry that through, you know, it's one thing to sort of implement a workflow system and so on, but you need to manage the decision that you want, what way you want your business to work for you and for your clients for the next sort of 12 months. Because let's face it, as Chris has alluded to, we are going to have a lot of other things based on the economic position that the country is facing, and other things coming down the road, such as the MTD. But maybe there's opportunities in that now to make decisions to get you and your practice and your clients ready for this, but you need to take action on this every single month, and automate as much as you can out of that using something like Pixie in terms of getting information. But one of the things that I like as well is that we've done is our onboarding process was something that we've worked on for a number of years. If you can automate and streamline your onboarding process, one of the things we do is we have a questionnaire for people who want to sort of do work for us. Then we will have different ways of bringing them on board. We will ask them, get them to fill out a questionnaire. We will be able to give them a video to say, before you kind of jump on board with us, this is how we work. And just to let you know, before we go through a sign up on a proposal process, we use Go Proposal, before we even price this, be aware that we will expect you to respond like this and within this time frame and so on. So start to map out your entire processes, I think, from top to bottom for your firm from February onwards, and make your workflow management system just part of your overall ambition and goals, and make decisions quickly.
Definitely. Great advice. Chris?
I've got two pieces. So I think it's around communication and community. So communication in terms of what, if you're a practice with employing people, constantly conversation, asking about are they okay, thinking about do they have any problems, but also communication with clients. So therefore it's so easy just to say avoid the email and respond in a couple of days' time. Just pick up the phone and actually be honest with them in terms of, yes, I have more than one client. Therefore, it's a case of I have a lot of work to do this month, and then managing their expectations of what you could do to mitigate the situation. But then finally, community, because I think what we have found in the last 9 months is that accountants have traditionally been, let's say, non-communicatable with their other fellow accountants. But I think what's happened over the last 9 months is that whether you follow any of the Facebook forums or some of the LinkedIn chats, is accountants have really come together as a community to help each other share their problems. And the fact that whether you're mentally fatigued or you have a certain client not quite following the rules and you want to sort of share that story and get some help and advice, accountants are more than willing to actually share their own war stories and give some very sensible advice. So actually reach out to the community. So that's what one of the driving points should be for 21. Is actually, if you want to change your accounting practice, speak to other accounting practices about how they have actually changed and been a little bit more operationally efficiently, and think about what services, what technology they should and could be used. Definitely,
yeah. Collaboration is absolutely key, and like you say, there's so many firms this year that have been more collaborative and join these peer groups and are more willing to share their own processes instead of viewing other firms as competitors. Kieran, you look like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, something just sprung to mind because of the question that had come in about being a sole practitioner and whatever volume of work you've got to do now towards the end of January. If it's not feasible now, a lot of firms do outsource and offshore as a way of actually getting the compliance work done and returned and ready for review. And that's a business decision that can form part of your plans perhaps for 2021. Sole practitioners should consider that option to be able to get jobs turned around and you as the sole practitioner can focus on the client relationship, i.e., automate what you can to get the stuff in, and then have that communication and relationship with the client, whilst the other offshore or outsourced team are actually doing the compliance work. And that was one thing that I loved about Pixie when we started using it, was the ability to do Loom videos. So we do have someone there in the Philippines, and I literally spent time during the first lockdown recording videos of how we do things in Xero and Xero work papers and all our other processes with tax filer and so on. And he's able to just watch those videos and follow it. And it's not perfect, but if this guy's getting it 80 or 90% done and along those lines, I'm happy that we've got a good resource there, and something that's a permanent library of information to allow the business to expand. So try to think, instead of it's always going to be me and I'm just so snowed under, to how can I maybe expand this and change the way things are being done in the future.
Definitely. Celso, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think the advice that Chris and Kieran shared is absolutely brilliant. So being part of a community of practice, super important. Peer support. The times are going to get tough still. So it's definitely a good thing to have people that you can relate with in terms of experiences that you can take advice on, very valid advice on. So I think that could be really, really important. I guess that my only thing really would be, to try to not overcomplicate things. It's very easy to get in that analysis paralysis mode of trying to, implement every single or think about every single detail of things, etc. At the current stage, I would potentially just share the advice to move one step up instead of trying to move 10 steps up. So whatever you're doing right now, it's working. That's great. Let's try to improve. Now is the really good time to make notes. Even if you can't make those decisions as Kieran advised, which I think it's really, really good advice as well. But if you can't take action right now, for whatever reason, just take notes. And then when the time comes around, you'll be able to evaluate the notes that you took during the pressing times and make decisions on how to streamline everything at the firm, and with a bit more time to take action, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, I can't see any questions in the Q&A box, which means I don't think anybody has any questions, but if you do, you can try and sneak one in last minute now. I'm just going to launch a quick poll to anyone that does want to find out a little bit more about Pixie in more detail. We can send that information to you afterwards. But I'd just like to thank our panelists, Chris, Kieran, and Celso. Thank you very much for joining us and sharing your expertise and your insights. It's been incredibly useful. And thank you to everybody in the audience as well that attended. I appreciate given the fact that you said some of you are kind of only 50% of the way through tax season, yet you've given up an hour of your day to join this webinar so late in December. We really do appreciate your time, and hopefully you've taken something valuable from that. So on that note, I'd just like to thank you all for coming. Wish you all a very happy Christmas and a happy New Year as well. Hopefully January isn't as bad as it sounds right now, and that we can all get through it. And yeah, look forward to connecting with you all in the new year. Cool.
Great stuff.
Thanks, Jordan.
Much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.